Hello everybody and welcome back to OMB Reviews. I am the critic who is a cynic. Hope you're doing well, and today we'll be doing a box office breakdown from this past weekend, which saw the movie Smile continue its dominance on top of the box office, which is quite slow right now, but Smile is doing very, very well, seeing a kind of drop that I haven't seen since Top Gun Maverick, which I had not seen that kind of drop in a long time, if ever. So let's just say Smile is doing very, very well at the box office, whereas the new films, Amsterdam and Lyle Lyle Crocodile, are just not doing well at all, and Amsterdam, especially with an $80 million budget, is set to be a massive financial failure unless things start to turn around. And it also is, once again, another key example that Hollywood superstars do not sell tickets, but rather it's the movies that sell tickets. It's, do you create a film that people actually want to go see, and do you market that film in a way that people are actually going to say, hey, this is speaking out to me, because it's saying, hey, I want you to go see my movie because this is actually a really good movie that you should go see, versus, hey, this is a pompous Oscar bait movie, or hey, this is a politically charged movie, right? Which is something that I think we're just so used to from most Hollywood films at this point in time. But before going any further, though, please make sure that you smash that like button, live that fire button if you're watching on Odyssey, smash the rumble button if you're watching over there, and also make sure you are subscribed, hitting that bell notification. That way you know every time a new video or live stream goes live on the channel. So going into the actual numbers themselves, Smile only dropped 22% in its second weekend. So again, very impressive number there. If you remember back to when Top Gun Maverick first came out, though its initial start was much, much higher, much, much stronger. I'm definitely not putting Smile total box office wise in the same category, but definitely putting it in the same category as far as total drops and total holds are concerned. Because remember, when Top Gun Maverick came out, we were seeing drops in the teens in that first to second weekend, and we saw continuously strong drops and holds from those weeks after. We're looking at that right now happening with Smile. 22% hold from last weekend, making another $17.6 million, just destroying the second place movie, which was Lyle Lyle Crocodile. This movie also, Lyle Lyle Crocodile, was projected initially to be the #1 film. So Smile not only was able to vastly outperform Lyle Lyle Crocodile, but also it shows us that Lyle Lyle and Amsterdam didn't really match up to what maybe some people had originally expected it to be from the likes of Box Office Pro, who make box office predictions and things like that. But Lyle Lyle Crocodile made $11.5 million, and based off of the fact that the film costs around $50 million or so, it is based off of a kid's story. It features a actual CGI crocodile who can't speak but sings. That alone already has me uninterested. If that was a book I was reading to my kid, okay, that sounds like a nice book that would actually probably entertain my child. But if I think about that in the context of a live action adaptation, I don't know. Just something about that automatically just does not work. Unless you have the same cast and crew behind films like Paddington that are able to actually give you a really good story, based off of some previous stuff, I think that is really the only way you can make it work. It's clear based off of some of the initial reviews for this movie and also the lack of box office, especially coming out at over 4,300 screens. I imagine that if not by the second weekend we see drop-offs from those theaters, by the third weekend, absolutely. I would not be surprised if the numbers hold as they are, that you see like half of those screens get pulled because it's just not really performing. Similar story can be said for 20th Century Fox, which is Disney's Amsterdam, which is the brand new David O. Russell film that stars everyone and your mother. Literally any person, any actor that you can think of that is a mainstream Hollywood person is in this movie. That's what David O. Russell seems to be doing nowadays. He used to make films like Silver Linings Playbook, which had, a handful of big names, and it was actually a really well done, well made, well written story. And then he went off to make American Hustle and then decided just to make it this giant ensemble cast, and the movie ended up being a giant bore and sucked, and also made Oscars history by having the most nominations with no victories. So Amsterdam looking to continue in that heritage set by American Hustle with a lot of people in it, but also showing us that, hey, just because you got some big names in it does not mean anyone is actually going to see it unless you have something that is worth seeing. And that ultimately, I think, is what the major story currently right now in Hollywood and the box office is that if you make movies that people want to actually go see, they will go to see it. If you build it, they will come, as they say, right? If you look at Top Gun Maverick, if you look to Spider-Man No Way Home, those are great examples. It also is a great example of, hey, if you don't have a politically charged movie that has a giant propaganda campaign behind it, then you also don't have a very good chance of making money, because that's really the only reason why The Woman King is doing as well as it is doing, because it also had a pretty strong hold in its fourth week of release, only dropping 22% itself, making another $5.3 million. This is a movie that just got released in the UK. It has yet to be released in Mexico and plenty of other international countries, meaning that the movie still has a chance of being able to make some of the money it's still missing back. The chance of it breaking even, making some profit is still there, though I will say after every single week that goes by, the more countries that come out, if those numbers continue to be not all that impressive, if there's not a single country that is going gaga for the movie, then it's going to tell us a lot. But what we can say from this, because of the small drops-offs, and I've mentioned this in previous box office breakdowns as well, what this is showing us very clearly is that the propaganda is working. Right? There is a clear propaganda machine pushing this film, trying to shove it down everyone's throats, right? Trying to play defense for this film, and it's clearly working. And we can know that by the fact that this film has not seen a massive drop-off, right? If people actually did a second of research to see what The Woman King talks about and what it doesn't talk about, I think that you would have seen a massive 60-70% drop, but you're not seeing that. So even though there are some people apparently on social media, as I am off of social media these days, but I hear through the grapevine about things, there are more and more people that are waking up to looking up facts about the Dahomey Kingdom, of which this film is based upon, and saying, oh yeah, this tribe of people, this kingdom of people is actually one not worthy of giving any praise to, right? This whole film has been pushed and has been marketed as, oh, strong women, strong female warriors. It's like, yes, those same warriors that enslaved the tribes of the surrounding areas, right? This kingdom as it was expanding. Oh, wait a minute. It's bad. Colonialism, right, is evil, right? That's kind of the main crux of what the story is trying to tell us, is that, oh yeah, remember colonialism? That's evil. It's like, what about colonialism within your own country? You know, are you saying that expansion is okay if you happen to be a specific tribe in a specific country, or rather in a specific continent, and then you're taking over others, beheading them, putting them into slavery, selling them into slavery, etc., that somehow is okay? But if it's something that's done by some people who are a part of, again, other countries, specifically European countries, nope, then we're going to call them out. You know, we can't have Columbus Day weekend anymore, right? Columbus is evil. It's Indigenous Persons Day, even though we're not going to talk about some of the many atrocities done by, the early Mayan, Incan empires and things like that. But no, we can't talk about that, apparently. It's just hypocritical, right? It's hypocritical at this point in time. But The Woman King, regardless of all that, regardless of my own feelings about the movie, and just the fact that people are clearly just getting fooled by this movie and by the propaganda being pushed by it, it is still doing well enough financially where it could eventually make its money back. It's not far off for that film to be there. Similar story can be said for Don't Worry, Darling. Even though the controversies around the film sounded to be more interesting than the film itself, it had a massive drop in its first week of release, or rather from its first to second week of release. It's continuing to have a fairly decent drop of almost 50% in its third week of release. The only thing going for it is that it's only about 10 million in the red, so it doesn't have to do all that much more to make its break-even point. I could totally see it doing it by the end of its run, but we'll have to wait and see how this fares in the next couple of weeks, especially as we get very close to the release of Black Adam, which I think is just going to lead to many of these films that have been having decent drops or not terrible drops end up plummeting, because people are going to actually want to go see a film that actually has some intrigue to them. Even though I've been saying this previously, that I don't think Black Adam is going to be a major domestic success. I think internationally, because of The Rock's name recognition, right? Hollywood itself, as far as it producing films with stars in it, stars don't sell films, but we can absolutely look at a track record of The Rock, especially having impacts on worldwide totals and being somewhat part of that factor. Not so much because of him being in the movie, but because of his international profile, his outreach, right? His ability to sell a movie, his ability to actually promote his film. He is a great promoter. This all comes back from his wrestling days, right? He knew how to do that. He knew how to sell the fans when he was a wrestler. He continues to know how to sell people today, and I think that's the reason why you're seeing a lot of his films continue to do very well internationally. It's interesting, if you break down a lot of his movies, go back to Hobbs and Shaw or even others which were not all that great, you saw a relatively lower, or a relatively low even in certain instances, domestic number and then a massive international. And so I would not be surprised if that is the case for this. But regardless, it is still going to take up a large portion of the domestic box office. And so I think films like Woman King, Don't Worry Darling will have to start to worry about some of their numbers at that point in time. Avatar continues to hang around. I don't know why Avatar continues to just, again, some people in the comments have gotten a little salty about that, or a little hurt about that, but ultimately it's just not a very good movie. And people saying, oh, well, just because it's based off of previous material doesn't mean it's bad. It's like, yeah, but when you have something called unobtainium, in addition to all of the other things within it, not to mention, of course, the love scene where they're using their tails just like they use their tails when they ride their animals. Yeah, again, there's a lot of really weird, creepy things about the film and just not well-written things about the film, and clearly borrowing from other films, other better films to boot, with giant blue Smurf people at the end of the day. So I'm never going to back down from that one. Number 7 is Barbarian from 20th Century Studios, Disney, $2.1 million. So because of a lower budget on this film, now 5 weeks out of its release, so even though it's starting to drop out of theaters, hey, it already made its money back and is continuing to add on to its profit. Nathan Slay, I know that you're a big fan of that film, so I think that you will be happy to hear that it's continuing to add to that. The movie Bros, that's right, the movie Bros, which opened in the number 5 spot because no one saw it, is now in the number 8 spot because nobody saw it. It made $2.1 million, dropping 56%, which is not the worst kind of drop-off between week 1 and 2 that we have seen, but it is definitely bad enough when your starting point is only about $4 million. Right now, this film has only made $8.8 million domestically, and it is projected to flop. That's right. We can say as of this weekend, because of the numbers as they stand, Bros is likely to be a flop, losing somewhere between 20 and 25 million when all is said and done. What is not a flop, of course, but a major success story is Top Gun Maverick, which continues to add on even after 20 weeks of its release. Bullet Train continuing to hang around, though. You can see for all of these films that I'm mentioning right here, whether it's Maverick, whether it's Bullet Train, or even DC League of Super Pets, these are films that are on the way out. They're hanging out in some screens because there's just not a lot of competition. So studios say, hey, we can make probably a couple extra $1 million over the course of a week. Why not go ahead and try that out? Speaking of Bullet Train, though, it is, again, adding another $640,000. So very happy to see this film continuing to add to its profit margins. DC League of Super Pets, I had said that this film had a chance of making its money back, had a chance because it was doing that, towards the end especially, that slow rollout. This film's been out for 11 weeks and was continuing to have small drops. But as you can see, this is the biggest drop to date of 57%, and that tells me that they're done with it. Warner Brothers is said, okay, we tried to keep this out as long as we could, hopefully making some of the money back, but ultimately, this film is going to end up as being a financial failure, and it's Warner Brothers, so I can't really say I'm all that surprised by it. Minions, of course, is still doing well, even after 15 weeks of release, $510,000, well over $900 million worldwide. See how they run. We finally have a budget for this film, at least according to IMDb, as an estimated budget. No one else is reporting upon it, so because of that estimate, I would imagine that when the actual official number comes out, it would be different. It just wouldn't surprise me. But based on that, they are saying that the film costs estimated $40 million, which just doesn't sound right based on the fact that it's a Searchlight film, which is independent, independent distributor for the 20th Century Studios, now Disney brand. So that just doesn't sound quite right to me, but hey, again, those are the numbers as they are. And if that is the case, then we're looking at a box office flop for this smaller budget and just smaller footprint movie. Invitation still hanging around, Pearl still hanging around as well, still adding to their overall profits. And there's a few others down at the very bottom of the list that are also adding on to their own profits. Smile, of course, is the big news of the day. As you can see, it is just doing very well in comparison to its box office projections for its domestic. Right now, it is sitting at $89.8 million worldwide, so very, very impressive. Will easily hit $100 million by the end of next weekend. Not nearly as impressive for La La Crocodile at $11.5 million. This film cost around $50 million, I believe, to make. So this film is definitely far off from where it needs to be as a starting point to hope to have its money back. Not really that much going on with this movie other than just looking at that poster. I imagine some people are saying, oh, that's why I didn't make any money. But it is based off of a children's story, but apparently not even the families are wanting to bring their kids to go see this movie. This is the same story that we saw with movies like Lightyear, right? That if the families are not wanting to bring their kids to a movie, then the movie's just not going to succeed. I know that's pretty straightforward stuff there, right? And I know there's a lot of other things as to why Lightyear specifically failed, but ultimately, if you are not going to make a movie that is going to reach out to the general audiences, that is not going to reach out to the families, right? Not just the kids, but also the parents. All right, singing Crocodile might sound good on paper, but to me, when I look at this, I say, yeah, this sounds like a straight to DVD, or nowadays straight to streaming service, free streaming service, basically. No PBOD, no premium feature. You just, have the subscription, you get to access it on Netflix or wherever. That's the kind of movie that this just comes across as. I thought it had the potential to be similar to Paddington, but apparently it's also just not getting a lot of very good reviews, at least on the very little information that I have about the reviews, as I stay away from places like Rotten Tomatoes. Amsterdam, as you can see, this movie, it kind of also speaks to itself as to why I think this film didn't do well. Look at that poster, all right? It's called Amsterdam, and the only thing on the poster are the names of the people. And yet, I don't know why they have not figured this out yet in Hollywood, that the names of actors do not sell tickets. Or at the very least, they do not sell tickets to the degree that they would need them to sell tickets in order to actually see or turn a profit. Because that's all you get here, right? You get the name Amsterdam, and then you get Christian Bale, Margot Robbie, John David Washington, Chris Rock, Anya Taylor-Joy, Zoe Saldana, Mike Myers, Michael Shannon, Timothy Olyphant, Taylor Swift in the film, Rami Malek, special featured in the film, Robert De Niro, of course, special featured in the film. That, to me, is just telling me one thing, and that's, okay, yeah, David O. Russell making yet another film, right? Making yet another film like American Hustle, where it had a lot of people in it, but had no heart to it, had a boring story to boot, and ended up getting a lot of praise and love from critics in Hollywood, but then ultimately didn't have anything to show for it because, as I mentioned, it did not win any of the Oscars that it got nominated for. Whether the Oscars matter anymore or not is neither here nor there. The fact that at a not important ceremony, you didn't get any awards, though you got a lot of love throughout the entire year of your release because of these again, more elitist mentalities and these more elitist profiles, it tells me a lot, right? You would think that you would have a major part of the film, right? You would have maybe a certain character, a certain actor who has a certain costume or a certain look for the film, right? That's going to actually bring people in to say, oh, I want to know why this character, why this actor is looking the way that they are, acting and doing the things that they are doing. I know this is just one poster too. I'm sure there are other posters for Amsterdam that show a little bit more, but I just think that this poster specifically is just so quintessential to explaining why modern day Hollywood is so out of touch. They think that, oh, if you see this poster and you start reading those names and you see those first two names, especially of Christian Bale and Margot Robbie, oh man, I got to go see that movie that has those two actors in it. Right? That may have been true a long time ago, but that's not where we are now. I think that the one thing that the pandemic has absolutely had an impact, and I think it might be a semi-permanent impact on, is that people are a lot less willing to spend their spendable income, right? Their extra income on movies, and specifically on movies that are either not interesting, don't seem to be interesting, or at the very least don't seem to be trying to get their attention, right? There's nothing about this poster, there's nothing seemingly about this movie that is trying to appeal at all to any type of general audience. And I say that because some might say, well, it's an indie film, it's not meant to be taken in that way. Well, then why are they spending $80 million on its production budget? You have to take these things into account. On an $80 million production budget, you better be making a movie that actually is delivering and is actually, trying to reach out to audiences to bring them in. $10 million opening weekend, not looking to be the case. This is looking to be a massive financial failure and flop. Woman King up at $64.1 million now worldwide, but as I've said consistently, that international number is going to be the key here. It just got out in the UK, and so it still has a plethora of countries to be released in. We could very well see this movie. It made $2 million in Brazil, $570,000 in France, about $170,000 in Nigeria. Those aren't really all that surprising. But also, these numbers here on the numbers don't update all the time. Again, we do know this film did release in the United Kingdom, and even though it's not here in the current charting, we also look and see at this $10 million number here. And basically what it means is that they have not updated the charting to include the countries that it has already been released in. So companies like Germany, or rather countries like Germany and the United Kingdom. But as you can see, it still won't have a Spain release for quite a while. Mexico is coming up this week. Australia is coming up later in October. So it still has some countries to come out in, and so we still have to wait and see on this one of whether or not it makes its money back or not. Don't Worry Darling, set at $69.2 million because it only has to make it's only $10 million in the red. It doesn't have to go that much further to make its money back. It has a chance, but It seems that the, again, drama behind the scenes being more interesting got people out the first weekend, but has since led to a lot of people staying at home. Barbarian at $38.2 million. Bros only at $8.8 million with a campaign that has gone out of the way to try to say if you have no interest in seeing this movie, or if you don't like this movie, or have anything negative to say about it, it must mean that you're homophobic. Yeah, I'm sure that that's going to bring and drive tons of people out to go see your movie, especially with the very first thing you're saying, the producer of Trainwreck, which was a complete and utter train wreck. I would start off with Forgetting Sarah Marshall, because that was actually a good movie that a lot of people generally liked for the most part, whereas Trainwreck and Bridesmaids are a bit more divisive. Trainwreck is much more on the negative side. Bridesmaids, I would say, is leaning positive for most people, but yeah, not a very good selling point, especially, as I said, your main selling point is, oh, it's a rom-com with gay people. It's not enough to sell a movie on. Top Gun Maverick, this number is not yet updated, but on Box Office Mojo, it's at $1.477 billion or so. So looking like this movie is not going to hit the $1.5 billion, but hey, the fact that it got to as high as it did is still darn impressive. Over $600+ million in net gain profit. Bullet Train at $238.2. Just happy to see this film having made its money back. DC League of Super Pets at $198.5. Has the chance of getting to $200 million by the end of its run, but won't be enough to make its money back. See how they run, because we are getting that projected budget of $40 million from IMDb. Making only $17.1 million internationally means that this film is set to be a box office failure and flop. Going over to my website, ombreviews.com, because I like to do some box office charting over there. Check out ombreviews.com if you want to find out more information about that, and also ways to support the channel and contact me as well. You have Lyle Crocodile, $11.5 million, meaning right now it's $68.1 million in the red. Again, when you have a $50 million budget, it means you got to make quite a bit of money back on your return. So it's got to make $125 million to break even. And let's just say it's got a quite a ways to go. Amsterdam's $80 million budget means right now at $10 million right now. And also keeping in mind another interesting fact, all those names mentioned there for Amsterdam, and it was beaten by a Lyle Crocodile. I just want to throw that out there. $114 million in the red for this movie. I'm expecting next week to be able to say very emphatically that this film will be a massive financial failure. The movie Smile, not a failure. $89.8 million means that film right now is $28.4 million in the black. As I had mentioned last weekend, the film would hit its break-even point very quickly, and it has. And also right now we're projecting it to make somewhere between $51 and $82 million in net gain profits by the end of its run. Whereas Bros is projected to make only is to lose somewhere between 25 and 22 million by the end of its run, because it was made for $22 million, which is not on the high end of things. But when your 2-week number is $8 million, and that means that based on history, most historical standards, the likelihood of it making anything past 12 to 17 million is not that likely. You're looking at a movie that's going to end up being a box office flop. So, hey, good on you guys for continuing to attack the fans. Glad it's working out for you. As I mentioned with Don't Worry Darling, it's only $10 million in the red, and so even though it's not performing all that well, it doesn't I think that initial opening weekend doing better than what some people may have expected because of people having just interest in the film because of the drama behind it. It seems that might actually be enough. That initial weekend might be enough to kind of push this film over the course of the next 4 or 5 plus weeks to maybe get its break-even point. It's not going to be a massive success by any means, but it is definitely one to look at. As I mentioned last weekend, it's either going to be a $5 million loss or a $13 million gain. So I think somewhere around that break-even to $3 million in profit is a likely scenario. Woman King right now is $44 million in the red, but as I've said, don't let the current number and current total kind of get you off on that, or kind of confuse you on that, because the fact remains that this movie it's actually even better than that, because this number for some reason did not actually update in my charting. So this film actually doesn't have to make nearly as much back, as this number should be at $64 million as at the current moment. Going ahead and trying to pull up my charting here, because we like to do things sometimes live here on the channel. We'll go ahead and fade over to that real quick. So as you can now see, we are over on the actual raw charting. This is where it gets published from. So at $64.1 million, which is currently right now its worldwide total, it's at $36 million in the red, so not nearly as bad as it was previously. But also compared to its first 2 weeks, look at that number at 59%. That means right now it's tracking to probably end up getting to that 50% number, meaning it's going to double what it made in the first 2 weeks of its release, and it's going to be because likely of that delayed release schedule internationally. The big question, of course, remains, is that still going to be enough for this film overall? And that is going to be the big question that all of us have going forward. See how they run with that new updated number. I can project that the film will be a box office flop right now at $49.7 million in the red. Hasn't been doing terribly week to week, but much bigger budget than what was expected for this movie. But those are the numbers as they stand. So what are y'all's thoughts? Do you think that Lila, Crocodile, or Amsterdam are going to make money back? Have you seen either of this film? Anything to say about it? Let me know in the comment section down below. Also, what are your thoughts about Smile doing as well as it is? Again, kudos to them for their marketing campaign, and clearly effective campaign at that. And then also your thoughts about Bros, Don't Worry Darling, or The Woman King. Do you think that either of them, any of them, are going to make its money back? I think out of the three, Don't Worry Darling has the best chance. And then I do still think there's room for The Woman King, right? Remember that if you actually have the updated numbers for $64 million for its total so far, it has a chance because of the countries it has not yet been released in. But let me know your thoughts about this and anything else I mentioned in the comment section down below. If you like this video, smash that like button, light that fire button, honestly, smash the rumble button as well. Check out that top link in the video description if you want to find my locals page to support me over there, and also links to my Patreon, Subscribestar, Discord page, and all those places. It really does help a lot with that type of support. So you guys are amazing. Have a wonderful rest of your day, a blessed Sunday, and as always, God bless. And now for a huge special shout out to all of my locals, Patreon, and Subscribestar members at the Keeper of the Bifrost level and above. Starting off with Patreon, Father Luca Illich, Garrett Searles, Joe Horn, Jaime Ari Hymason, Jeff Toon, Jonathan Carney, Laura, the Modern Major General Story, Orange Hat Reviews, who you can check out over on YouTube at the channel with the same name, Rosetta Allen, who also has a YouTube channel called Eagle Rider, and Miss Martin Muses, who also has a YouTube channel by the same name. Thank y'all very much, my Patreon supporters. And also for my Subscribestar peeps, Matt317, who you can check out over on Twitch at Matt317, Storm Tracker, The R, Fast Reaction, Mr. Roy, J-Rod the Beer Guru, and ZK-Man, who you can check out over at xtheboundaries.co. And lastly, my locals members, Miss Minnesota Hockey Fan, How About a Hockey Player, UAB Mad Dog, Mike Jackson for the win, J.H. Schwalbach, and the great lawyer Robert Barnes. Thank you all so very much for your support. If you would like for your name to be shouted out at the end of every live stream and video, please make sure to check out the top link in the video description where you can sign up over on Patreon, Subscribestar, or Locals. You get access to things not only like shoutouts, but also to giveaways of 4Ks and Blu-rays, an exclusive podcast that I do with John the Flick Pick Flickinger every single month, and also the Chosen of Valhalla live stream for my Chosen of Valhalla members, which we do once a month, and it is a lot of fun. So all of this and plenty of more content, check out those links in the link tree in that top comment down below. You guys are all amazing and beautiful people. Hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. A blessed October to everyone out there. Blessed month of the Blessed Virgin Mary. And as always, God bless.